my goodness. This episode will be coming out months later, but we just last night had our November It's Giving Camp Patreon movie live stream with a movie that Fabiola you had never seen before, which I guess is what we did for October too. We had never seen.
Dracula.
Yeah. You had seen Heathers, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. I had a
And
pause.
I famously don't like the musical.
Right, right. I'm so glad now you have finally seen Velvet Goldmine.
Yeah. I've also started rewatching clips.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I I think I texted you this. It's the movie since I've seen it now 3 times and I love the music. I'll put on movie songs from the soundtrack and then because I have such a familiarity with the movie now, I'm like listening to the songs and I'm just imagining the sequences from the movie again. And it just gets me really hyped. But that is a movie that is well, actually, what would you say the main theme of Velvet Goldmine is?
To me, I feel like it's mainly about the era of glam rock and like the transition into the 80s as
Hmm.
well. And just like generally like about like a cultural heritage of glamour and camp and artistry, like with the gem that's passed down from Oscar Wilde to
Yeah.
all of these other rock stars.
Would you also say that it is about artifice and the constructing of a persona,
Yeah,
which is very relevant to our discussion for the movie today?
yeah. Which, like you were saying before we started recording, it's wild how like we watched these two movies kind of back to back that are pretty similar in theme
Yeah.
and construction almost.
Yeah. When like aesthetically, like the context, like there's a lot of differences, but what is being said is similar in a way.
You took over research duty for this one.
Yes, I did. I'm gonna say in the words of our friend and reoccurring camp pod guest Nicole, I think this is one of those advanced camp texts.
Definitely. Like I feel like I'm entering this recording just almost fully not knowing what I'm gonna say.
Well, that's great. I mean, I'm hoping you've got questions and I've got some answers. But at the same time, this is not really a movie for answers.
I also like did like a little bit of research just like as a way to like kind of try to piece it together further.
Yep. What are we discussing today, Fabiola?
Today we're talking about Kamikaze Hearts from 1986. I
Yeah.
also want to shout out the way I watched this film, which is it's in the Solidarity Cinema Archive, and they have a
Oh.
list on Letterboxd with like a link to the archive.
Oh, that's so cool.
I found it via Letterboxd.
Hell yeah. This is the second time I watched it. I watched it last year when I got a free trial to the Kino Lieber Lauber
Lorber,
Lorber.
Lober.
For some reason I always think there's an A. Anyway, I got a free trial to their streaming service because I had to watch Fascination for the pod. And so then I tried to watch a bunch of other films that they had in their collection in that week. So I also watched Poison. That was actually another uh, Todd Todd Haynes film. And I watched Kamikaze Hearts and I was blown away. And I was like, we should cover this for the pod. And this time I watched it on Canopy, which I'm grateful my local library had access to that. But this is our quote unquote documentary for the season. Um,
Yeah. We always kind of have a documentary every season, but this one is like half documentary.
yes. So, and I read two different interviews with the director, Juliet Bashore, one from Filmmaker magazine and one from Screen Slate, which are both, I think, helpful contexts to bring to this movie because it is it's often been labeled a documentary. In film festivals, it was put in the documentary section. And that was not something Bashore wanted. It is sometimes called a fictional documentary. It's like,
Because it's like not really a mockumentary, because like that name implies like comedy, and this
yep,
is a drama.
yep. This is a movie where the main characters are like going by their real names, or at least their stage names. This is a movie that is about the porn industry and the specific relationship between these two stars, Sharon Mitchell and Tiger. Wait, actually, what's her?
Tigger.
Tigger Minette. And there's the crew of this porn version of the opera Carmen, and it's about the relationship between Tigger and, as she's referred to in the documentary, Mitch, and it's about this movie that they're making, and it's about the movie of the documentary that they're making, and the porn in the movie, the Carmen musical, that's fake. That's not real.
It was created for the movie.
Many of the scenes were staged, scripted, storyboarded.
I think I read that like the entire thing is storyboarded.
So that's this is the complicated thing. There's a a lot of it was, you know, planned, but certain things also were unplanned. Certain things just came up organically. And to say that it was improvised, I think also there is that connotation, like you said, with mockumentary, that like that would be comedic. But this is a drama, and in some ways there is it is a constant question of what is real and what is fiction. And I think that that is one of the very an aspect of camp that very much fascinates me. It's the artifice, it's the performance, and in that performance, if something isn't real, is it actually getting at something that feels real? So,
Yeah.
yeah, in the Screen Slate interview, Bashore said that towards the very beginning, like, you know, we're introduced to Sharon Mitchell, like she's in the back of a cab, and then she's at a show, like I think it's at the end of a strip show of hers, and she's like being asked questions by the audience, and she's like, "Oh, well, right now I'm working on this new documentary feature. I'm calling it Truth or Fiction." And that was a pre-planned segment, that there was going to be like, oh, we're the audience is asking you questions, but it was really like the director asking questions. But specifically the question of, is it more truth or is it more fiction, Bashore came up with on the spot. And I feel like the answer that Sharon Mitchell gives is really interesting. There's so many quotes of hers that I wrote down because who she is as a person, character, performer, it's very blurred.
And it's like also at the center of the film.
Mm-hmm.
What's your next movie gonna be? My next movie is the movie that I'm filming right now at this very minute. Um, it's called Truth or Fiction. That's what I call it. And it's a movie about myself and my girlfriend, who I love very much. And there's the microphone. It's taking place right now. Don't worry, you guys aren't being filmed. It's okay. It's sort of a surrealistic look, I guess, at myself and my girlfriend and the way we look at the X-rated film business and our relationship with each other. And it's very nice. Is it more truth or more fiction? I don't know, because I don't know whether I'm more truth or more fiction.
So I'm wondering how would you like to go about discussing this, I guess. You said that you feel like you're kind of not really sure what you want to talk about. Do you want to hear some more behind the scenes stuff that I've researched first? Do you want to try to go and try to outline the like plot beats of this, even though there's not necessarily many like it's not like a super through line of the story, but I mean there is, but what do you want to start with?
I was thinking of like you reading out the research and then maybe thoughts come out from there.
Okay, yeah, great. So the director of this movie, Juliet Bashore, she had done some work on some porn films, not many. She has a story about how like her first time working on a porn set, like she didn't realize it was gonna be a porn film and was suddenly like she was quote gobsmacked. uh she didn't know it was a porn. She thought that this was gonna be a setting where like she had this idea in her mind where it was this was going to be the set where women were exploited, and she's like, oh, actually it's kind of more complicated than that. And so one of her original inspirations for Kamikaze Hearts was trying to kind of recreate for an audience her perspective and an understanding of first kind of getting into the porn world. So trying to kind of show like what is it actually like. And she was also really interested in the idea of deconstructing the like straightforward documentary format and genre. So this was a quote from the Filmmaker magazine interview. She said, quote, I was thinking very academically, very theoretically. Audiences still had a tendency to view documentaries as objectively, quote unquote, true, and I wanted to play with that assumption. So she always intended for this to be like I think other ways she described like um working on this movie like that it's kind of slowly like she wanted over the course of the film to kind of slowly break down like you're thinking you're watching something very straightforward, you're watching a very like straightforward story that's a documentary about the porn industry, and then as the movie goes on you start to kind of question more what is the structure, what's actually going on. um, and then that combined with meeting uh, Tigger, who like on another like porn set she met Tigger, who had this idea of like I want to make a movie about my girlfriend Sharon Mitchell. And so there's moments in throughout Kamikaze Hearts where there's like talking about like they're taking Polaroids and they've like made this whole kind of storyboard of the movie they want to tell. Like that is true. Like Tigger had this like plan and this idea of like I want to make a movie starring my girlfriend and about our relationship. And that is another thing that in these kind of retrospective interviews, because the interviews that I found, a lot of them were from like 2020, 2022, I think, like because of this kind of more recent restoration and the Kino Lorber distribution. And there's definitely like, you know, I think Bashore was questioning like how how much of even their relationship outside of the film, outside of what is captured, like what was the truth of that relationship? She describes it as not necessarily like, this like, oh, this, balanced healthy relationship. She says, quote, I met Tigger and she had this fantasy of doing this film about Sharon Mitchell, this woman she was obsessed with.
Yeah, because in the film, like it's very clearly established that they're a couple, but the way that their relationship is shown is just so kind of odd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like Mitch is like always performing, always like interacting with everyone, and then Tigger is very focused on production and making things run smoothly and like making sure that Mitch like knows that she has to be like on time on set.
And that whole movie set, like, that is a fiction. That isn't like,
Yeah.
there isn't an
It's not
actual,
like she actually has to be on time on the set.
but in a way, like, we see kind of Tigger like acting as a producer, trying to get things like rolling on this fake Carmen movie. But Tigger was very much involved in the production of Kamikaze Hearts, the documentary. So in some ways, like, we're seeing her
Yeah.
act as a
I'm pretty sure she
producer.
has like a screenwriting
Yep.
credit.
Yep. Yeah. So it's like we're seeing a performance, but in some ways you could read that as a stand-in for her actual role in the like meta narrative of the documentary being produced.
Yeah, like in the film, like the narrative framing of it, like she kind of comes across as like not being entirely in control of everything. She's almost like in the background in a lot of moments. But
Mm-hmm.
like behind the scenes, she has an entire writing credit. And like as you said, she like approached the director with like this idea of making this movie.
Yeah. Oh, also something to add. So a lot of the like big figure characters we kind of see in this like movie set of Carmen, um, like they knew it was fictional. The the director, who I'm pretty sure the director was the blonde guy, not the blonde actor who like gets his dick sucked, but there is a guy who's like a director of the shoot. And he knew it was fictional because he was a director friend of Bashore's. And the like producer character Greystone, like that's not his real name. But he was an actual porn producer who apparently, like I've seen in letterbox reviews, like people who like have attended Q&As of the film recently, like Juliet Bashore and other people involved with the movie was like, oh yeah, he was a like sleazy, creepy producer. And like the act, like all of the porn star actors knew it wasn't an actual porno. But the crew, the people who maybe aren't necessarily being interviewed, just the people holding the cameras, the grips, the lighting, like the people you just see in the background who are part of a film crew shoot, they didn't know it wasn't an actual movie. Like they thought they were second unit. Like they thought they were doing pickups for an actual movie. And like I think it was in the the screen slate interview, like the director was saying like she wasn't trying to like deceive them or anything. It was just like she thought it was like gonna be easier for the setup and to like have this backdrop of like a porn shoot if you like hired a crew and have them, if they think that it's a porn shoot, they're gonna be acting like it's a porn shoot. Because that was the scene that wanted to be set to kind of explore the characters, the relationship of Tigger and Mitch. But it's also really interesting because in some of the interviews, like Bashore is saying, like she's like, "Oh, this isn't an actual porn. Like you don't actually need to go through and like do a full sex scene. but the actors still performed it through like it was an actual porno and like did actually have sex, even though that wasn't like we don't actually see all of that in the movie, which I also find really like there's just something I think the more as we talk about this, it's just so
They're like committed to the performance. They're they're committed to the bit.
yeah. And like I feel like this is a really good film as a gateway for us to try to start talking about how the porn films and porn industry connects the camp. Like I think we've talked,
Yeah, you like that's something that like you've been interested in and brought up.
yeah, because I mean we've covered like sexploitation films. Like we've covered
Yeah.
Doris Wishman, not Doris Day. uh God, no.
Wildly different,
Yeah.
wildly different.
I don't know. I feel like there's kind of this I know that there's a lot of stigma and taboo around like straight up pornos, you know? Like this is might be a tangent, but I saw on Instagram today where it was like some film blog that also has like a Instagram post. Might have been Astrostraddle, something I don't can't remember where, but it was like some like they were like a series of slides and it was like a short history of kink in cinema. And they had like a slide for Belle de Jour and Crash, Cronenberg's Crash and Secretary and then like 50 Shades of Grey and the new film that's coming out Pillion? Is that what it's called?
Billion,
Yeah.
yes.
And like they still, you know, they say in the thing like a short history. So, but some people were like, really? Like these are the only films that you covered? Like there's so, they were like, people were bringing up other films in the comments, but I was like, it was still kind of all like art house stuff. And I was reminded of like that documentary I watched when we covered Bad Girls Go to Hell and like talking about like more like how exploitation films and like sexploitation films and like and then you know going into just like porn history like there is that is still filmmaking, that is still cinema, and it doesn't really get talked about
Yeah.
academically or treated with as much respect. um and it's like
Yeah. And I feel like this film really shows just how thin the line is between the industries.
exactly, that's the thing that I think is so
And like I remember during the Screen Actors Guild strike that and there was like some conversation of like will porn performers be like part of the union at some point or like why haven't they been part of the union since they're also technically acting and it's
yeah,
technically a big established industry.
yeah. And like people like there you know like I mean even Juliet Bashore was talking about like her perception of the porn industry as being like oh this is where women are exploited, and it's like any industry women are exploited. Like yes there are creeps, but we know that there are creeps just in Hollywood. Another story about this movie is that the original cinematographer um wanted to like was apparently telling the director like oh you also need to go and like get B-roll of like other you know other sets and like show that like women are being exploited, and so you should have like some sort of voiceover to like talk about this, and it's like that's not this film, like what are you saying?
Yeah.
Like yes there is a scene or two, you know, there's like this sleazy creepy producer who comes on um you know, and like it's supposed to be a scene where the actress Mantra is like giving a guy a blowjob and she's like I don't want to do this while the producer's here, and then like you see that producer like taking photos of this other actress what was it, Jennifer Blowdryer, love that name. Jennifer Blowdry is like taking photos of her, and he keeps being like, "Oh, show more skin, show more skin." Like, "Oh, this is just between the two of us. Don't worry about it." And it's like super creepy and super uncomfortable. And like knowing the production of this movie, that was all like that's all staged. That's all part of the script and part of the narrative.
There's fully a camera crew there.
Yeah. So like there is an aspect of this that is talking about dangerous, unpleasant working conditions for these actresses. But it's not like the image of a documentary at this time, you know? It's not what the cinematographer was thinking where it was going to be a bunch of like, you know, like images of crying, you know, sad women with like a voiceover moralizing over it. It's like, no, this is this, you know, the director and Tigger, like actual actresses in the industry being like, here's the story we want to tell, and we're constructing it. And I think that that is an example of how this film isn't real, but is still getting at truths. Because also, we haven't yet said we will have to discuss at some point this final scene, which is probably the most
Yeah,
famous scene of the movie.
yeah.
Like I when I say famous, I don't know if it's actually that famous, but it's like the one that is like I saw people talk about when I before I watched this movie, and I was looking it up, and I was like, what's going on? And they're like the shooting up scene, and I'm like, huh? We'll talk more, I think, about the whole like themes of drugs and addiction and stuff. But this final scene, Tigger and Mitch get high, and they are actually high, and they're just kind of that. None of that was planned. That is something that was like the directors talked about. Like, I mean, it was planned in the sense that they did go and they're like, okay, they're gonna get high and we're gonna film it. But once you get high, it's like,
Yeah, because like during the scene, Tigger herself was like, I have to do this for the script because it's like part of the plan for the movie.
well, so actually, it's a bit more complicated than that. Their plan was to end on a sex scene or a love act. Like that's what how I think they even refer to it in the movie. They're like they need they wanted to have a scene that was gonna be the climax of the movie, which is, you know, we actually get to see a actual not a planned sex like porn scene, but like a scene between the two actresses having sex. And that just they kept it was not able to happen. There's I haven't didn't see in interviews like why specifically it wasn't working out, but it wasn't working out. Actually, let me read this whole quote because this is so interesting and enlightening. So this is from the Screen Slate interview with the director. She says, "quote And I guess they thought that they would turn it into a love scene if they had drugs and if they were shooting up because, as it turns out, in their personal story, they were never really lovers unless they were getting high. So their lovemaking was inseparable from the drug thing, except for that first time, which they refer to in this like sex scene.
Yeah,
I don't know if they were actually lovers in the traditional sense, but that's sort of the underlying thing of the whole film. The whole thing was a kind of facade. Even the fact that they were lovers was a facade that Tigger had fallen for.
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
This movie's performance on top of performance, while also being only like half a documentary and half of it like being very genuine.
But it's like it's yeah, there's truly so because there's truly so many layers of that where it's like, okay, at least the director's understanding of the movie is that, you know, Tigger's like, I am in love with this woman. I want to make a movie about our relationship. But we're gonna
And
write a script to do that.
the woman in question is always like performing. And like
Exactly.
she says so herself in the movie, like I'm always on.
So it's like, okay, it's all kind of a lot of staged scenes. We're doing all these stage scenes. Okay, we're gonna try to show us really having a sex scene, but it's filmed, so in some way it's not real, but it's real. And then they're like, okay, well, we're only comfortable having sex and like the true like to really show what our relationship is like, we're gonna need to get high. And it's like thinking, but like if I think that there's almost like this idea, it's like, oh, like Tigger's convinced that that is actually what is real. And there is a question of, is that even an actual real relationship? Even if in that final scene, they're like, in some ways they know it's somewhat staged because there's a camera there, but they're trying to kind of get to something as real as possible. But if the camera wasn't there, that like if they were just together, is even that still going to be real? Because like you said, like Mitch is someone who's constantly performing, and a lot of their relationship was through the act of like getting high together and having sex.
And like also like filtered through film production.
Yeah. But then Mitch has these lines where it's like, oh, I think Sharon Mitchell understands this, understands that none of it is actually like fully real. Because like you said, she's talking about how she's constantly performing. She says that
Like she's aware that she's performing and she's like actively, she like knows that she's actively doing it, and it addresses that like I am performing now.
which I think is the I mean it's the whole that whole scene is great where she holds up the needle where they
Yeah.
just did heroin. She holds up the needle and she goes, "This was my dick. I fucked her with my dick." I mean, that's not none of that was planned. That's just a raw ass line that comes from someone who is like high and was like, I want to try to talk about what this relationship is. And you can actually see, like,
She kind of sums it up there.
and they're both literally bleeding because they're like from
Yeah.
the injection. They like wipe their blood on each other. Like, that's not fake. That's fucking real. And that's like, there's, I think many people have referred to that moment as the cum shot.
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking about porn, you're thinking about like, oh, this whole scenario, it like, a simulated sex scene, or not even non-stimulated. Like it's actual, like it's script, but the actors are actually fucking each other, and there is this kind of layer of there's a facade over it all. It's artifice because it's not an actual real scenario. But with a cum shot, like that's I mean, sometimes it's, it's simulated, it's fake. But there's many times where it's an actual cum shot. It's actually bodily fluid you're seeing. And that is why, like, to put it very bluntly, their blood, it's like that is their actual real bodily fluid that you are seeing from penetration.
Yeah. And again, it's like an abstracted version of the real thing.
Yeah. But also, like, okay, to kind of step away from like, I mean, this is still going to be somewhat analytical, but I think one of the things that I love and I find so fascinating about this movie is, as a pansexual woman who has had relationships with many different people, like, look, I have I will say I've never done heroin. I have not. This is at all not a representation of what I've actually like lived experiences. However, I do really, really appreciate the fact that there is penetrative lesbian sex in this movie that isn't what one would think penetrative sex is.
Yeah.
It's abstracted, but there is something real about it. Like when she holds up the needle and says, "This is my dick," that's not an actual dick, but there is it still represents all of the dynamics of being with someone.
And also like their specific dynamic
Mm-hmm.
that like as you said, like are they even like in a real relationship?
Yeah.
This is the truth. Mitch. No, Tigger, shut up, man. This is what you fucking want. This is what you got. You don't have to put it in. You can give it to me. I'll put it in my movie. But goddamn it, if I'm fucking getting high, I'm jeopardizing my career. But as I said in the cab scene, there's no fucking legitimate and illegitimate shit. There's no real or anything. No one dragged you in anything. This was my dick. I fucked her with my dick. And she loved it. And I waited. I waited for this fucking relationship to mature. And I was a spy, and I didn't dig it all that much, you know? What do you mean? I dug the image, but I had my fucking mic on when Mantra was talking to me about what she was, like, film talking about that man that she hated so much. But she really said some things when I was mic'd about the real thing. The real fucking movie within a movie within a movie. It's fucking timeless, just like this woman laying here freaking out. It's timeless. I'm not freaking out. She's bugged, but this is fucking what it's like. It's real. I just want to put it on film. And it was beautiful, panning up from that kid. Because that was a kid and that was sex and that's what it was. There's too much dialogue in it. You know, this is fucking real.
Also, one of the things, like, in my mini research, I started watching a screening, a Q&A with the director
Oh,
and
cool.
Sharon Mitchell, and like I I think she said she got fully clean right after making this film, and she got a bachelor's and a PhD, so she's Dr.
Yep.
Sharon Mitchell.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, actually, I read there was a I believe a New York Times piece back in 2004 because she actually is a survivor of a sexual assault attack on her. And after that moment is basically she had this she got clean, she, like, and then worked to get training on how to like help counsel addicts, and also then went and got a degree in sexual health and founded the Adult Industry Medical Healthcare Foundation, which helps make sure that adult performers receive like sexual health screening and tests, and then would help like make sure sets would be closed and if there was an outbreak at all. So like has done a fuck ton of work for like helping, like take care of adult performers and like, stop the spread of like HIV outbreaks and things like that. So yeah, Dr. Sharon Mitchell is so fucking cool.
Yeah. I think they mentioned that she also like does a lot of like local community work and like has done talks in high schools and everything.
Yeah, I mean, she's still in San Francisco, I'm pretty sure. Like this is a movie. Also, I don't know if we said specifically, this is a movie that's set in San Francisco. And I mean, I don't know too much about it, but I do know that like there was a period where there was this golden age of the porn industry that was in San Francisco. Um,
It's San Francisco and also the San Fernando Valley
yeah,
near LA.
yeah. But it was not it's not specifically LA.
Yeah, near LA.
Yeah.
Like I said, neighbor industries.
Yeah. Anyway, we started talking about the scene because it's so we have to talk about it. But I wanted to actually bring up the fact that earlier when we're kind of talking about this like idea of how it wasn't an actual porn set, like it wasn't an actual film, and yet we still have like all of these performers and this crew and producers and stuff from that industry. And there's these staging of these kind of scenes of the actor Mantra being uncomfortable with the producer. After they're getting high in that final scene, I think it's Tigger who's saying like is kind of referring to that, saying like, oh, like we had the camera on and we were talking and Mantra was saying stuff that was like, that was actually like real, that was actually like talking about being, having seen, having moments like that in the industry. And there's the quote that's like, the real fucking movie within a movie within a movie. Like it's there's just all these layers of like it's staged, but what they're talking about is real, and that it's a real part of this industry, that many things are staged. Like there's so many layers.
That is like one of the really effective things about camp, of like how the artificial like does reveal truth in some way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the things I find really interesting also in relation to how the director has like spoken about just the ways that the film should be presented, also in comparison to the subject matter and the style of the film itself. I've been thinking a lot of like the mix of high art and low art,
Yeah.
like with the like something about like the opera concept is like very high art, but it's melded with like what is considered low art, and how like we need to at least mention the very 80s style of
Oh
everyone in
yeah.
this movie. Tig has the craziest mullet.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking as I was writing down all my notes, I was like, writing a lot of notes that are about like what they're saying and what this film is about. I was kind of like, I hope Fabiola's taking notes on like the actual visuals of things, because I wasn't as much. But
Yeah. And Mitch has like very bright blush and
oh yeah.
like very strong striking eyeshadow.
Oh, but she
But
oh
like in relation to like the film exhibition, like in the festival Q&A that I started watching, and the director was talking about how like this is the way that I intended this film to be shown, like within the
mm,
proper context of like parts of it are definitely staged, planned, and there's an outline, but of there also like kind of needing to be this interactive academic element to it as well, for it to be like further discussed, which I feel like that's only a thing that tends to happen with like high art, of like
mm-hmm,
requiring a really specific way of exhibiting it and showing it to
mm-hmm,
the public,
mm-hmm.
while the film itself is like as I said, like arguably like about low art. And I feel like in some ways the form of like documentaries period have kind of become low art in a way, with like how like these days with like how fast they're being produced and like the sheer amount of them
Oh,
nowadays.
that's okay.
They're
That's
kind of fast fashiony.
I I absolutely agree. I did not think that was the direction you were going to go in though, because I thought you were going to say that with like this kind of prevalence of social media, there is kind of there is documentary forms that have been kind of I'm struggling to find the right verb here. They've seeped into very, I would say, like pretty low media of just this like constant social media. Like everyone is, just posting and filming and recording their own life.
Yeah.
And it's real, quote unquote, but it's often, it's very curated and staged. And that's the thing that look, I took one documentary class in college, and it was literally
I
all
also took one documentary class.
but I taught pop docs, which was all about like new media documentaries, and it
Oh,
was
yeah.
so we literally discussed social media and like Instagram and vlogs and TikTok through the frame of documentary. So I have potentially the unorthodox opinion that like, look, all documentaries are subjective and biased and to a certain extent unreal. Like, and that was the other thing
Yeah.
I was wondering if we're gonna get into.
Yeah, that's another thing I remember about my documentary class. But like with like my like fast fashion point, I was thinking about like
The
the other day I
Netflix.
was watching yeah, the Netflix stuff, and also the other day I was watching like just a daytime talk show, and they were talking about how like a doc about the Louvre heist is like
Oh my
just now coming out. And like they were also like really shocked. Like that was very recent.
yeah.
And it's like, what exactly was the editing process for it to be like churned out so fast?
Not just
And
editing,
now on
the
like YouTube,
research.
yeah. And now on YouTube there's like so many AI history videos
Oh God, yeah.
that are
Uh-huh.
kind of supposed to be documentaries, but
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really good point. God, yeah. I don't want to try to like think too much about like the AI slop aspect of how that intersects with documentaries because I feel like that will mm, cause me to unintentionally make it seem like I think low art is like inherently like poor quality or of no
yeah.
value, which I don't think that that's like low art to me is just like I think I mean I don't know if this is your
And like
definition but
AI
like
is not art to me
yeah
in any way.
yeah but I
Like
think
no
like
one actually made that.
it's I think it's like the if we're talking about low versus high art it's almost like it's an accessibility thing, right? Like it's populist, like art versus like high art is, it's like yeah, it's the opera, it's the art museums where you have to be kind of this idea of like wealth and status, right?
I feel like it's both accessibility but also subject matter, and like there is like some subject matter that is like quote unquote like high society approved,
Yeah.
like with like there's a difference between ballet and hip hop in terms of
Well, I mean that's
like
also
the cultural consciousness.
there's a lot of I think it's not just about class, it's about, race
It's
and
everything.
gender and
Yeah.
like it's like what
Like
is
it's the hierarchy, subject matter and form,
yeah.
not just about the accessibility of it.
I mean I think those kind of I would still argue that those two kind of there's a kind of a cause and effect there, right? That like this kind of certain social class being like, well, we have what we deem to be appropriate and we're kind of gonna make it only accessible to people like us. I mean, I don't that's a gross oversimplification, but I don't think that the accessibility of high art is not disconnected from the themes and the audience.
Yeah.
I've had guys that I've worked with that it's like, okay, you may be the star, you're the woman, you're getting paid big bucks, Mitch. I'm only getting like half your pay per day. But I get paid for my dick, and I don't have a heart on, and you suck my dick right now.
Yeah,
get on your knees, and thank God that you can do it.
Yes.
Because I got to get the heart, and I have to come, so my job is harder. I resent that.
I mean, I've done that kind of thing before, and especially like not really having to fuck since I had herpes at the time. I couldn't have anyway. But just like, is fine with me.
Were you getting into it as Aunt May, or were you getting into it as Jennifer?
As a camp personality.
But a personality nonetheless.
Yeah, which I permanently am.
Talking about this kind of high low art thing, it does remind me also because I was thought about social media. I wanted to bring up this one moment from the Filmmaker magazine interview that I thought was super interesting, and I didn't write it down because I was like, I don't know if this connects as much, but I'm making a segue, and I'm going to bring it up because I think it's so interesting. So this is a quote from Filmmaker, the Filmmaker magazine. I was just reading a past interview you gave in which you said that pornography can't operate without the quote protective distance of the voyeur, unquote. Neither can social media. Do you see connections between the two, perhaps when it comes to depersonalization? Bashore. I thought of the sleazy side of the porn world as a kind of biopsy of our narcissistic, media driven culture, an obscene metaphor for Hollywood and the culture at large. The obsession with the gaze and what that does to human beings. I guess maybe that suggests some truth, if what was once a metaphor has now metastasized and become commonplace. I hope I hope it's not totally predictive. As a friend of mine says, quote, we're all pornographers now. And found that really interesting because in some ways there almost seems to be a kind of, I don't know if that was an editorial stint or the director's like bias that kind of almost seems to have this kind of negative opinion of like a voyeuristic gaze. I do think it's really interesting to say that like because there is the camera, the camera as this vehicle for the gaze is I think very sexualized. The fact that the prevalence of smartphones and having a camera in your back pocket and the ability of the prevalence of social media, the ability to just post whatever you want. I do think it's really really interesting that to kind of correlate that to the idea that we're quote unquote all pornographers now. I don't know. What do you think of that?
In a way, it reminds me of like I've seen some conversations about like why what happened to the nightlife and
Mm.
stop filming random people in public.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I think to record and to document is how some people feel like that's the only way to be included, to make it mean something.
But like in terms of like the nightlife conversation, which can kind of apply to any public space, which is like it's not like how it was 20 years ago. Now everyone knows that there could be a camera on them at any moment. So like it's just highly surveilled, just like
Yeah.
their personal lives and just like how they live day to day is now documented, basically.
Yeah.
And like with that comment, it also kind of reminded me of and like made me think of just how that's kind of a similar relationship that the film and Tigger have to Mitch in the sense that it's
Yes.
kind of like parasocial and like
Yes.
very fascinated, but
Yes.
like there is like a sense of distance and like there's very much a kind of invisible barrier that's sometimes felt, but also sometimes it feels like it isn't there.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was thinking the same thing. Like when I was reading, it's like, oh, this idea, this the the gaze, the obsession with the gaze. I'm like, that's isn't that kind of what this film has? Like the fact that, knowing behind the scenes or even it discussed in the movie that like Tigger's like, I want to make this movie about my girlfriend. I want the camera to be on her and on our relationship because that's the only like it seems to be like that's kind of a, the only framework that they have for their relationship, the fact that their first time they had sex it was because they were partners in a porn scene and then that's how they fell in love and it's like I don't see within the film Kamikaze Hearts like I don't see there being like a critique of the gaze as sleazy. I don't feel like the gaze is like creepy or weird. but I do think there is a distance and there's a sadness that comes from that. And I think that
there's like a paradoxical like distance, but also very personal vibe.
yeah. And also like we haven't really even got into like how much like Sharon Mitchell Mitch seems to enjoy having the camera on her. Like she talks about like constantly performing and stuff, but like
One of my favorite scenes is like when she's like in drag with a mustache and a top hat, and she's like kind of interviewing everyone on set, like looking at the camera and being like making the camera follow her, like she's
yeah.
asking everyone these questions.
Yeah. And like I think during that is when she says she's like I'm always in character. She's like I can't have sex as Sharon Mitchell. Like oh, and there's also that line right where she's like, "Oh, I don't get paid to act. I get paid to stand around because I'm always acting."
Yeah.
You know me. I really really love work that acknowledges the camera. I love films that acknowledge the fact that there is the process of filmmaking requires an interest in watching. And I find it even more enjoyable when there is a depiction of people, characters, or, you know, real life people in this case, because the documentary aspect of this movie, where there's people who enjoy being watched and enjoy performing. Because I feel like that pushes back against this idea of like, you know, oh, the creepy voyeur who is it's you know unconsensual and abusive, and it's like that's yes, in real life there is cases of that, but also when it's a film, like within the bounds of a story, everyone knows what's actually going on, and
I also love that there's a moment where Mitch refers to like, oh, like the scene in the cab.
mm-hmm.
Like she like fully addresses that like there was this scene that was shot of like her in a cab earlier in the film.
Yeah, I mean, I think that final scene where they get high, it's great for so many reasons what we've already talked about. But one of the reasons is I think partly because they're like high and they're not, you know, being as they can literally not be as you know, like carefully constructed with their words because of the intoxication. There is very like they're directly addressing the fact that the film was constructed, you know, and they're referring to that, and I think that that's part of what Juliet Bashore's like intention for this movie to, you know, you're watching it thinking that it's you know it's all a straightforward documentary, and then suddenly the fantasy and the artifice starts being revealed. But while I think that it's really like beautiful and fascinating to see Sharon Mitchell talk about enjoying the performance, this film also really shows how that does have an effect on Tigger and their relationship, and that's really hard for them. And it's really like it's just so I don't know, it's just a movie where I'm not
She's kind of having an existential crisis while the film itself is like a process of like her trying to process this existential crisis that she feels about this
yeah.
relationship.
It's like it's never asked, it's never ever stated. But I think that there is this question, you know, that Tigger is asking, like, does she love me? Does she actually care about me? Is this actually genuine? You know, like the movie, the whole setup, everything isn't real, but is their love real? Is the relationship real? Because they were actually dating. But yeah, that the process of making the movie maybe kind of shows like, oh, this relationship is not as balanced and as genuine as I thought it was.
Yeah.
And that's really fucking sad.
like I feel like this film is kind of reminiscent of our previous season, where a lot of it is kind of like about how camp can be devastating and still be
Mm.
camp.
Mm-hmm.
And like this film uses the whole conception of artifice and planning to end up being sad.
Yeah.
Are you in character all the time?
In character?
Well,
During
'cause
sex, I'm never in
see,
character.
me, I can't have sex as Sharon Mitchell, right? It's like I have to have sex as Carmen or fucking Tallulah or somebody else because I can't get fucked in front of the camera unless I'm that. I'm an actress. I really am an actress. It's so fucking laugh, right?
Perhaps that they can't really enjoy it, or they couldn't be acting. I mean, it's the question about acting in real life, and they're doing a very intimate thing, and yet it's being called acting. Is it an enjoyable thing? Is it pleasurable the way private sex can be, or is it purely an acting experience for them?
Who are you when you're off screen with somebody you like?
I
Your
can't
character
say
then?
because I'm always a character.
You're always your character off screen.
I'm
too?
always I'm off screen right now and I'm a character.
Is that okay with you?
I don't know any other way.
Really?
I get paid to wait around between shots. I don't get paid to act. I do it all the time.
We've got these core questions, you know, how much of the movie is real versus constructed, how much of the character of Sharon Mitchell is real or constructed or performed, how much of the relationship between Tigger and Mitch is real or performed. And I think that also I think that leaves me with a lot of like really interesting questions about how that relates to the porn industry in general. And I don't think right now I have answers, but I hope that this can be a movie that, I don't know, hopefully, you know, folks see this, contribute the conversation. What you know what other folks think about watching this movie, and I would love for at some point for us to maybe, I mean, I know some people who are porn scholars. So I think maybe next season, I think that'd be a really fun collab. What are your kind of do you have any closing takeaways? I'm looking through my notes trying to find if I can find one last quote to end on, but
I feel like I've kind of said all the thoughts that I know I have. I like do want to reiterate that the vibe is very 80s. Like it's like not even like the glamorous kind of 80s that we see a lot, but the kind of 80s style that stayed in the 80s.
yeah, there's a lot of body hair and I'm really into it. Okay. Here's one last quote. I don't think I've read this yet. So, it's a bit of a long one, but this is again from Juliet Bashore describing Kamikaze Hearts. Quote, "My film is about the layers of fantasy that surround that being the porn industry. It's not about the pornographic images so much as it is about all the layers. This other kind of striptease that's going on, this psychic striptease. And one thing I wanted was for straight men to go see this film with the expectation they were going to see like the cum shot or something. And then instead getting delivered this other kind of thing that they weren't prepared for and weren't expecting, and be, in a way, confronted with this other kind of transgressive behavior that wasn't going to be titillating in that same way."
Yeah. And like also that description of like what like her statement of what the film was about, like is it really like my takeaway of it? Like to me the film is about the relationship between Mitch and Tigger.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really, I don't know, I think it's really fun to, and I really, like, I do, at the core, it absolutely is about the relationship. But I also just love that this is a movie that's like, yeah, we're going to talk about the porn industry. And instead of, you know, someone might go in and they think they're, oh, we're going to get see a bunch of cool sex. And instead, it's making you think, it's making you uncomfortable, and it's pulling you into kind of like, you know, like she says, this transgressive behavior. You know, it's the doing the drugs and the shooting up, and it's the titillating, it's not fun titillating, you know, lesbians making out for your enjoyment. It's about a fucking like intense relationship that is not working out. And I don't know. I think it's a good example too of, like you said, you know, this how camp can be really devastating and cruel, and also how something can be transgressive and taboo to make you think and not just like upset or excite.
I hope those guys watching this movie ended up like really invested in the relationship and like cried at the end.
Yeah. And can I say something kind of crazy?
What?
I think that's also a good description of Jennifer's body.
Yeah, in relationship to the marketing.
Yeah.
Listen to our episode on Jennifer's body with Nicole on Marvelous.
Yep. Well, that's Kamikaze Hearts. You liked it?
Yeah, I think I liked it in the way that like we like within the framework of how we've discussed it, in the sense that I like that it's doing something really interesting with film.
Yeah. I'm really glad that this season there's been I've been able to get a couple of my own suggestions for films that you've never seen before and you've watched and that you've really enjoyed. I'm kind of proud of that.
Yes. What should we close on?
Do you have any quotes from the movie that stick out?
Oh, I just remembered one, like when Shannon is talking about like her influences and like people like she admires. Like one of the people she mentions is Gloria Swanson, which camp icon. I still haven't watched Sunset Boulevard, but like I know the imagery and I know the like historical memory of Gloria Swanson. And
Yeah.
she also mentions Ronald Reagan in the
Yep.
sense that he has managed to perform as president.
Yep. I think that's a really funny, interesting moment we haven't mentioned yet. Also, she's wearing a leather jacket and she's like, one of my icons is James Dean, obviously. That is, that is, look, if we're gonna end somewhere, we've all got icons we look up to, and sometimes those are famous actors who've died brutally, and sometimes there's actors who became president. I guess that's what we all want to. That's what all actors want to aspire to. Um, and let's hope the next actor who becomes president is way better than the other actors who have been president.
Who try to think now of like which actor do I think would make a really iconic run and also be good at it. Not that Reagan was necessarily good at it.
Yeah, Kiki Palmer,
John
baby.
Cena.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
Thank you to our patrons.
Ike Everard, Dominic Overman, Joshua, Marcus Gorman, Arcadia Reeves, Jose Liano, and Pericles Caspari.
This episode was edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub.
Our theme music is by Harrison Lurie. I've been Saffron Hefta-Gaub. You can find me everywhere at Gaub Hefta.
I've been Fabiola Liano. You can find me on Instagram at Fabiola the Gremlin and on Twitter at Fabiola_Liano. The podcast, It's Giving Camp, on Instagram at It's Giving Camp Pod and on Twitter at Giving Camp Pod.
It really helps us out if you're able to give us a rating or review.
Be sure to support our Patreon.